I'm currently living in a permanent supportive housing unit through Shelterhouse. Nancy Duford has been my advocate since I've moved in. And Lorna Gay is my friend for the journey. She's also a Shelterhouse employee or volunteer. Nancy and I have met once a week over the years, and through our conversations, I have learned coping skills and placing of boundaries, and I gained confidence in making better choices. Today, I am putting in hours for my own Habitat for Humanity house. I am a parapro working with special needs children, and I am involved in my church. I am the proud parent of a 5-year-old daughter named Abigail. She attends school at St. John's Lutheran. Overall, through Midland's resources and my strong support system, I'm here today co-parenting with the man I left. With my acquired skills and support system, we have been able to co-parent in a positive way with our daughter. One of the programs offered by Shelterhouse was the Friend for the Journey. It was in 2010 that I met Lorna. Mentor in many ways. She's kind, compassionate, and giving. But the most amazing thing is she's my sister in Christ. I'd like to introduce Lorna Gay.
Well, I'm not here with a speech, but I'm just here to support Donna and to also thank the Shelterhouse, because it was actually, it's always being blessed back, as we shared at luncheon in the spring. But I came to the Shelterhouse actually moving away from an abusive relationship out of town, coming back home, and met with Mary Beth for a few appointments. And then it was in that I chose to, of course, come on board and try to give back. But you can't ever outgive. And the blessing that has come back with or through my Friend for the Journey has just been amazing. One of the things I appreciate most about Shelterhouse too is the way you do just keep on giving. You don't say you're here for 30 days, put you out, and we're done. But I have heard about Nancy appointments for the whole 3 years we've been together. And Kim, you introduced us, so you'll always be special. I've taken a number of classes through the Shelterhouse after the basic training, or whatever you call it, and then trying to find my little place. But I'll come and do maybe times with the office help, but this is my thing, the one-on-one, and I'm just very blessed, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity. There are just so many things. I'm going to take a quick look at my notes because I want to not forget anything. But I know that we did have a 6-month commitment. That was how you started, and we filled out our questionnaires, how we might match with our partner, and Donna wrote down what she wanted in a match. I wrote down what I wanted. I know she was looking for spiritual sister support, and I know that God worked through Kim to put us together, and we have found that. So in our 3+ years now that we've been together, way past when I had to record the volunteer hours. That was just too hard. I just wanted to go have fun. But so we got that done, got that passed, and then we just continue to have fun. But I've watched Abby, her daughter, grow into a darling little Jesus-loving sweetheart. And when I was invited to the Christmas program at their church this year, and she's practicing her songs at the house and everything, but I mean, she's just such a sweet little girl, and just loving her God so much. And I'm just very proud of both of these girls. So yes, I think that pretty much concludes what I wanted to say, but I just want to thank you again for blessing me with the opportunity to serve in this capacity, because we're just going to be friends for the whole journey, all the way to the end. So thank you, and God bless you all.
certainly say thanks be to God. I think that we have an amazing God, an awesome God, and I have really overcome, and I feel really good, and it's all through His blessings.
Good evening, everyone. We have another guest speaker. Her name is Joanne, and she wants to share her story. Hi, everybody. Somehow I got not on the list, but I spent a few weeks putting this together to talk to everyone. I really don't know where to begin, but I do know that beginning living with my second husband, after leaving my first husband who had been involved in drugs and drinking, he was extremely charming and made a lot of promises, and it was just going to be, this wonderful life together. I was kind of down on my luck, so, somebody coming in and rescuing me would be a great idea, it seemed to me at the time. He had been married before, and he had had an ex-girlfriend, and he told me a lot of things about them that were not true. The one thing that sticks out in my mind is the most is there was a dent in the wall in the paneling where it just caved in. I said, "What's that?" He said, "Oh, well, my ex-girlfriend, she cornered me and she wouldn't let me out of the corner in the room, so I threw her into the wall." I thought, wow, she's not a very nice girl, Boy. As time went on, I found out that he was allowed to go anywhere for as long as he wanted with anybody and do anything, but I was not allowed to go anywhere unless he had his eye on me. He started to refer to me to other people as psychotic, lazy, crazy, jealous, and stupid. He had a fixation on pornography. He liked to play a lot of violent video games. Sometimes he'd sit in front of the Xbox for 16 hours a day and just ignore me and the kids, scream and yell at us. He liked to use the neighbors and his family to keep track of my whereabouts. He would do things to get me in trouble at work. No matter where I worked, there was always some kind of trouble, it seemed, and it involved him. The physical abuse started after our son was born. He would kick me in the knees and in the ribs with steel-toed boots. He would kick me out of the house and tell me to pack my things, and when I did, he would beat me up for trying to leave. Sometimes he would lock me out of the house all night so I would sleep in the car. He'd punch me in the face. He'd knock me to the ground. One night he slammed my neck into the floor so hard I had to see a chiropractor the next day. He would spank the kids almost every day with a leather belt. He would scream and belittle them. He would abuse our animals. Me and the kids, we tried to maintain this picture-perfect world, so everything looked okay on the outside. But at home, we walked on eggshells, and we rode out the red carpet for him every day, because we never know what he might do next. Often his attacks were random and without warning. You might get screamed at, you might get hit. He hid money from me, he stole money from my bank accounts, and somehow everything had been put in his name. He would see other girls. He would buy luxury items for himself, even when he was unemployed and I was the only one working. When my mother died, my focus became more on my grief and less on him. And as a result, the abuse got much worse. He started stalking me, opening my mail, and following me from room to room in the house. At the same time, he started buying my oldest daughter special gifts and giving her special treatment. The hitting, being slammed to the ground, and the kicking continued. One night during an argument, he jumped on me, putting his knees in my chest, and strangled me. I thought it was the end of my life. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how. Everyone who befriended me was considered by him to be a thief and would be run off. I was very alone. My family continued to be in denial, and sometimes they would just sympathize with him, but still they offered no help to me. I did not know how to get help or how I would survive this. Years of being beaten, told that I was fat and stupid and helpless, and believing there was no way I could make it on my own. Due to my oldest daughter getting into a lot of trouble at school and running away, CPS got involved. And for the first time, I opened up my mouth and told somebody the truth. And they referred me to Shelterhouse. And I was able to get my daughter some help through mental health. But at that point, he even got worse. He'd stand over me while I was sleeping with his hands on his hips and glare at me. He told me stories about he threatening his ex-girlfriend by holding a knife up to her throat. He tried to put GPS on my vehicle. At Shelterhouse, I met Robin, who helped me see everything through a different perspective. For the first time, somebody said, yes, this is abuse. And no, you're not crazy. I went to get a PPO, and the clerk's office and the judge were very kind. I got my ex parte PPO in 20 minutes. It felt good that there was people that actually would stand behind me. But after I left him, he stalked me relentlessly. It was the most frightening time of my life. When we moved out, we tried to move everything out at the dark, but of course the neighbors reported everything to him. I took everything I could as quick as I could. I took all of his guns and hunting knives too, and the income tax return, the kids, their things, and the barn cats. Nobody was getting left behind. Which was good, because he told everyone that he was being searched and detained at the Canadian border during work because of this PPO and wanted it reduced to a civil restraining order. And of course I believed him. And I felt sorry for him once again. And I said, okay. Within a week, he had bought a .270 rifle at Walmart. He would ask the school to report to him when the kids did not come to school so that he could try to get in the house while they were home. Sometimes I would get over 300 texts from him a day. He would wait outside my house or across the street. He would ask the kids to report everything that I did through text message every day. The lawyers played their games, and he got away with a lot. He should be in prison right now, in my opinion. I made the 911 calls. I made the police reports, but my lawyer refused to bring charges against him in court. Eventually, I found out that my lawyer had met with him, and I fired her and got a new lawyer. One night, he did send another man to my house to try to get in. I was doing dishes. The doorknob started turning all by itself at the front door. Thank goodness it was locked. I opened up the window, and there was a man standing out there asking me who I was and if I was the owner of the house and if I would come outside and talk to him. In addition to the mounting bills from the lawyer, I was trying to make ends meet was difficult, plus going through all the trauma he was putting me through. At night, I could not sleep, and if I did sleep, I'd wake up soaked in sweat, not knowing what the nightmares were that I had. My support group at Shelterhouse and having people to talk to meant so much to me to get me through that hard time. You know, we were washing and reusing plastic silverware and eating a lot of ramen noodles in those days, and when they did Christmas outreach for my family, it meant so much. And I kept on, and I got a lot of strength and a lot of help from my group, you know, and today things are, they're much better, you know. Eventually we did get a divorce finalized when I ended up walking away from the entire estate after over a year of battling it out in court. A few hours after my divorce was final, there was a suspicious fire set in my backyard, which burned up trees, privacy fence, and my neighbor's shed, and almost caught my house on fire. Shortly after, the police in my village started a neighborhood watch group. It took me finding the right people to know how to reach out for help. Life is better now. I could never see myself as the person I am today. My kids are doing better. My oldest goes to CMU. My other girl is in cosmetology. My oldest son is very good at sports and doing much better in school, and my youngest is growing up to be extremely bright and smart. I really feel like I've been renewed and I got part of the old me back. This man, he has a new girlfriend now too. So some of his stalking and harassment has let up. I'm decent to her and I treat her well because I kind of have an idea what's in store for her in the future. And if I had to, I think I would end up eventually referring her to Shelterhouse. But I just wanted to say, thank you to everybody for the help, the support. Whoever works right there in the house, whoever's behind the scenes, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Maureen from Gladwin. This is a friend and a past client from Shelterhouse in Gladwin. Shelley's a survivor and a thriver. She now owns a beautiful building across the street from our offices, a whole body health store where she generously donates her space and her time to Shelterhouse events. So meet our friend Shelley.
Thank you. Hi. Hi. Whew. Hi, everybody. My experience with the Shelterhouse of Gladwin began when I joined the local Al-Anon group, which I joined because my husband at the time was an alcoholic. So trying to find help, I went there, and one of the members there had a card for the Shelterhouse and gave me the card and thought that they could help me. And so at that time, my concern was mainly for my youngest son, who was living in the house with the abuse going on, and wasn't really thinking about me. I'm thinking about him. He needs someone to talk to about what's going on. So I made an appointment for him. Didn't take me long to realize that I was in need of someone to confide in as well. At this time in my life, my household was filled with turmoil, crisis, and pain. My husband had become an alcoholic and was destructive. He was increasingly becoming abusive and was taking a toll on our family. My position was that I thought that if I went to the Shelterhouse, that the counseling that I would get there would save my marriage. That's what I really thought I was going there for. And that somehow things would get better. I would learn how to cope with him and make everything better, and we could live happily ever after. The one obstacle I wasn't prepared for was the truth. I realized that I really wasn't ready to hear what the truth was, and I stopped going to my appointments. My son continued with his counseling and was always excited to go. He would often mention that he was happy he had someone to talk to and felt safe to share his feelings and concerns with his advocate. That gave me a lot of peace to know that he had someone to talk to. Over time, the crisis and the turmoil escalated in our home. My husband was in and out of jail and rehab. I continued my Al-Anon program and really tried to make everything better. The focus in our home was always on my husband and his trauma. My kids and their lives were put on hold, and my life for sure was on the back burner with the alcoholic always in the spotlight. I always had hoped for a better tomorrow. I really lived knowing that all this pain and suffering would have to lead to something wonderful in the end. I just had to believe that when people endure this amount of pain, that reaching to something higher than us and coming from a higher place spiritually would pay off in time. I had no idea where that would lead, but I kept the hope. Time passed and the situation did not improve. In fact, it continued to get worse. Finally, my husband was out of the home, and the bad behavior we had learned continued to resonate in the walls. Even though the person that had set this tone was removed and the bad behavior continued between me and my son. I did believe that once my husband was gone, then the peace would prevail. The peace did not come as quickly as I had dreamed. My son and I would scream at each other all the time. It seemed we both were so angry that every emotion was translated as anger no matter what. By this time, I realized that he was only imitating my bad behavior, and I was the one that would have to lead by example. I didn't know how to lead, and I didn't know where to start. One day I was driving home, and I had an emotional breakdown in my car. I saw this big finger point at me, and the voice I heard said, "You better start paying attention to you." I broke down in tears and immediately made an appointment with the Shelterhouse advocate. In that appointment, the biggest secret of my life was revealed. I had never spoken to anyone about this, and there I was faced with dealing with my truth. I spoke my truth that day and set myself free for the healing process to begin. I had never shared with my husband or my family that I was sexually assaulted by a family member when I was 10. I had put this experience so deep down that I didn't even know how old I was when it happened, only remembering that during that time Elvis had died. I remember seeing it on TV. Everyone was upset, and I asked what was going on, and they said Elvis died. So when I did the math with my advocate, it turns out I was 10. Unfolding this story was the hardest truth I have ever spoken. With the guidance of my advocate, I was able to reflect on my past relationships and how this violation had affected my decision making. I spent my teenage years under the influence of drugs and alcohol. I had many sexual partners during that time. I didn't realize that the attention I was getting wasn't healthy for me. I thought I was finding love, but that wasn't true. I was a very angry young girl. As I grew older, I subdued the anger with more drugs and alcohol. Eventually, I became addicted to methamphetamines. Finally, I was about to lose everything to this drug, and I decided to move back to Michigan with my family and recover. I recovered on my own without rehab. My life had been filled with shame, guilt, and anger. With the tools I learned from the Shelterhouse, I was able to release my guilt, uncover my shame, speak my truth, and get to the root of my anger. It seems this journey would begin with forgiveness for myself. Forgiving myself for never speaking up and having that family member put in jail so we wouldn't hurt anyone else. Then I worked on compassion for myself. Compassion and the understanding that I was a child and children can easily be manipulated and it wasn't my fault. Once I truly embraced what these feelings were, then I could extend that forgiveness outward. The next step was forgiving my mother for never knowing what had happened to me. I was very angry with her for not noticing that I had changed. I realized what my attention-seeking behaviors looked like. I could be aware of this behavior. I could change this now. I realized that all of my relationships were based on attention-seeking behavior, drugs, alcohol, and sex. Now that I was single again, I was concerned that I would be attracted to the same personality types that I had chosen in the past. Through the Shelterhouse, I learned the red flags of the behavior that I wanted to avoid. I learned how to empower myself and stand my ground. I learned to trust myself in my decision making. I started to learn all of the different emotions I could have, and soon my anger was minimized by the ability to identify other emotions and allow myself to feel them and work through my truth. My son and I stopped screaming at each other and fighting. We used what we learned from the Shelterhouse to communicate and listen to each other, to have compassion and forgiveness for each other. Our lives are forever changed, and I am forever grateful to the Shelterhouse advocates for their guidance. Since I have taken this time to do the work on myself, and my life has completely changed. I own and operate my own small business in town. I have a gentle, caring man in my life. My son and I talk and enjoy each other's company. And I want to inspire and encourage other people to speak their truth, face it with courage, and know that in the end you will be set free and amazing things can be yours if only you open yourself up to them. Thank you, Shelterhouse. The work you do is needed, it's appreciated, and I'm grateful for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. I'm Maureen Barney McGuire, client advocate and court liaison in Gladwin County. And on behalf of Shanna and Savannah, Nikita, Sue, and I, we'd really just like to thank our board of directors for all the work you do. our director, Janine, all of our Midland peers, and all the volunteers. We also are so happy to show off Dwayne Bean. Chief Bean, you're all going to fall in love with him as a new board member, and just remember, he's from Gladwin County. The staff in Gladwin County knows full well what it provides for our clients to have a good working relationship with law enforcement, the prosecutor's office, all the systems in Gladwin County. We work hard for those relationships because we know that we know that they do so much for our clients. And we're lucky enough tonight to have Norm Gage here. Norm was the past prosecutor in Clare County, current assistant prosecuting attorney in Gladwin County. And every single week, we receive referrals from Norm's office. And we know that lives are made safer because of the work they do, and that they remember we're here and that we want to help. Just yesterday, a woman came to me and said that Norm had spent 2.5 hours with her. And before she left, he made her promise that she'd make a Shelterhouse appointment. And she did. And after we spent an hour and a half together, it became very clear to me that Norm just might have single-handedly saved this woman's life. She formed that relationship with him. She trusted him. She did what he recommended, and we've got a lot of work to do, but she needed to be here. So, Norm, would you come down here and talk with us a minute?
Yeah, you know, Shelterhouse is an outstanding organization. I had my first encounter with Shelterhouse, I want to say it was about 2002. I was a prosecutor in Clark County. And I had a state trooper in my office with a lady who was filthy. And she had a hand in a cast. And the other hand was all black and blue. And her knee was wrapped. And I suspect it had been several days since she'd had a shower. Probably equally as long since she'd had a decent meal. She was in my office because the trooper had made an appointment to interview her as a suspect in an arson case. They were in my office for about 5 minutes. And I understand you do not serve Clark County, but please bear with me. They were in my office for about 5 minutes. And this trooper came out. Now, mind you, this is a grizzled trooper. He had about 25 years experience. And he says, you need to join this conversation. As a prosecutor, I do not participate in interviews with suspects. That's unheard of. It makes me a witness. And I talked to my trooper for a little bit. It was Greg Proudfoot. Some of you might know him. And he says, you really need to join this conversation. So I did. And I walked in, and there's this little frail lady, and I've already described her appearance. And she says to me, I'm going to give you the biggest meth lab you have ever seen. And I laughed. And she said, no, really? And I laughed because I had never had a meth lab before. And as it turned out, it was, and still is, the biggest meth lab that's ever been busted in Michigan. And we started out, she gave me a description of it, and I called our local drug team, and they were there, and eventually we had the DEA, and eventually we staged out of one of the churches in the Harrison area, and they went out and they busted this meth lab. And as the state troopers went through the door, they were just finishing up a cooking of a meth batch. And you asked me what this has to do with Shelterhouse. And I'm kind of a hands-on prosecutor when it comes to my victims. Her boyfriend was deeply involved in this meth lab. And her boyfriend had beat the hell out of her. Not with his hands,